welcome to the Method. So in today's episode, we spoke with Elisabeth Carley-Leonard, who is an entrepreneur. She owns a music venue called The Shed in Leicester, runs an online travel business, and is also about to launch a company where she offers business and mindset coaching. The conversation was actually just full of revelations about things like self-care, maintaining ambition, achieving happiness, managing your emotions, managing your work-life balance, and so much more. So enjoy the podcast.
The method, we're eating, we're sleeping, we're fight. The method, for marriage or divorce or one night. Well, I know you probably think that it sounds pretty dumb, but the methods you use to get shit done. If you're chatting up a lover, you're going on a run, then it might be wise to heed the words of a pro with a little bit of help. Who knows, to get some happiness out of your woes, to get promoted to CEO of a happy mind inside your head. You don't want to wake up dead, thinking why do you work so hard for things that hardly work for you. The method works.
Right, so we're fairly unprepared for this one, so we're just going to let it flow. But
we're both. Well, I'm a musician. He manages bands, so hopefully we've got enough to talk about when it comes to that sort of stuff.
Definitely.
We both try and keep a positive mental attitude in our life, as much as possible. But it's an ongoing struggle.
Yeah, no, I feel you there. It's not being a positive person doesn't mean being happy all the time, though. Being a positive person means you just know that there is an alternative to being grumpy. So don't worry. You don't have to be like constantly vibrating at my strangely peppy level to count yourself as a positive person.
Well, actually, one thing that I always remind myself is that there was a study. This is a typical sort of like saying something that you have heard, but you've never actually verified it to be true. But I've heard...
I'm excited.
It might not be true. But I heard from a good source that there was a study and they talked to people about in hospitals about what people say towards like the end of their life. And one of the most popular, if not the most popular thing that people say is that they wish they'd chosen to be happy more. And that happiness is a choice that you give yourself and not something that you like strive to achieve within your life. And I thought it was really interesting and that more people should know that,
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh God, that hit me right in the feels, that did. Wow. Imagine. I don't ever want to be that person who's laying on my deathbed thinking, should have done, could have done, what ifs. And I'm very much so act now, ask for forgiveness later sort of person. I did not think things through, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it really, really does not work out. But you know what? At least I'm never bored. Never been bored. I haven't been bored in about, I don't even know, years. Don't remember the last time I was bored.
Quite impressive. What's keeping you entertained over those years then?
Wow. Well, I'm a busybody. So if way back in 2013, when I graduated university, nobody would give me a job. Like I even went for an interview to work at the O2 Academy on the bar there, and I didn't even get like a no. They just never told me. I thought that was really rude. Anyway, so when that all happened, I then am I allowed to swear on this, by the way, or not?
Fuck yeah.
So, okay, all right, okay, good. Like, you never really know these things, do you? Anyway, so I just thought, well, I'm going to make my own fucking job then if I can't find one. Like, Jesus Christ, like, I'm not being another, like, cliche statistic of an unemployed graduate with a useless degree because I studied event management, and we all know that is not a real degree. My exam was multiple choice, and seriously, I just...
we had no exams on my course. It was all just like coursework and projects. But halfway through my event management degree, I knew I'm pretty much never going to use this.
No, right, exactly. And I got into my third year, and we got put in groups with people, and I didn't really show up to many of my lectures because I was too busy drinking. If I'm being honest, I was hammered for 3 years of my life. Like, really don't remember most of my university experience. But we had to plan this like actual event, and I've been planning events since I was 12, 13 years old. Like, it's just kind of like in my blood. Like, I just like parties. I just enjoy it. And if I'm not going to be invited to one, I'm just going to make my own one. Like, that is my philosophy on life. I'm not going to wait around for somebody else to do something fun. I'm just going to create that situation for myself and then hope that other people show up so I'm not lonely. Anyway, the point is that on this university course, 3 years in, there was still people on that course who had never planned an event and never been to an event outside of a family birthday party. And I was like, who even, like, what are you? Like, how do you exist? Like, I don't...
I think it was the same on my course, because I went at it from when I used to live in North Wales. Me and my friend, we were in college together, and we used to we sort of took over the bookings of this venue in a place called Bangor, and it was just like a nightclub.
Nice.
And it was like, we just want music events. So they gave us like a summer of weekly events, and we just started like just hammering loads of events, and some of them weren't even organised until like the week before. We just like post on Facebook, we need 3 pop rock bands for this weekend, and sometimes it would come together, but we kind of went from there. And so we went to uni, we were like, yeah, we've got a kind of a good idea of what this actually is. But there were so many people that were just like, I don't even really know why I'm here, or like, I just want to I want to put on club nights. And then they would just like invite a bunch of their friends to like their local pub and call it an event and stuff like that. And there were just so many people like that. It was quite surprising.
Honestly, it baffles me. But anyway, going back to the whole I've not been bored for a very long time thing. Like, obviously I was drunk for 3 years. Very difficult to be bored when you're drunk. And then I graduated university, couldn't get a job, decided to create my own job. And that's when I started my first company when I was 22 years old. And since then, it's literally just been a whirlwind of, happiness, joy. And it's been, it's not all been good and shiny and wonderful, though. I've also managed to avoid the boredom from having several nervous breakdowns and having habitual burnout. And I'm actually just coming out of another one of those cycles at the moment. And I am so determined, not to drop back into it again, because now I am aware of it, and now it cannot bite me in the ass again, hopefully.
So what was
we'll track this.
What was the business you started yourself then?
So my very first one was called Dreaming in Colour Productions, and it will always hold a very special place in my heart. If I ever do get a tattoo, if I ever can commit to a tattoo, then I'm going to get that logo tattooed on me, because even though it's not running anymore, because it very nicely kind of segued into, the shed, the venue I have now, and the two just kind of like merged together as one like monster, I suppose. But I started off wanting to be a tour manager, and I didn't really know what that meant at the time. I thought a tour manager did everything. I thought they managed a tour, which meant finding the tour and then booking everything and then doing all of the shows, all of the, like, literally everything. Like, I really didn't understand the breakdown of roles within the industry. So I took it all on myself, found a band. They could obviously see me a mile coming, like knowing that little naive me didn't understand the difference between like booking agents, managers, tour managers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I even tried to be a radio plugger at one point. I have mad respect for radio pluggers as well. That is such a difficult thing to do. Anyway, so I started off doing that. And then because this band, no one had heard of them and I loved them, I couldn't actually get them any shows anywhere. So I was like, what can I do? So I started hiring out venues up and down the country and just putting on these shows anyway, and just going into these music scenes with like blind faith and hope that it would work out. And then I kind of just started being a promoter, and then it all just like, I don't know, just really like naturally happened. There's this thing called positive trajectory. Have you ever heard of it?
No. Well, kind of, but please explain more.
Right. So I discovered this recently, and I'm very pensive and, thoughtful about my life at the moment. Positive trajectory is essentially when you are on the right path, when you are doing what you are supposed to be doing, when you found, your dharma, your purpose, your meaning, everything will just kind of click into place. It will just start naturally happening, and one thing will lead on to another. And yes, there's going to be like hiccups and challenges along the way, but you'll be able to like easily kind of like navigate this whole journey. But if you're not on a positive trajectory, then shit is just going to keep going wrong, like constantly. It's literally the universe being like, what are you doing, you idiot? Stop it, abort, delete. And a lot of people don't realize this, and they're like, but I think I want to do that, or I feel like I should do that. Like people who are forced into, I don't know, becoming doctors when they want to be painters, for instance, that they're just going to be blocked constantly. So I honestly feel that, I don't even know, I just go with the flow so much that I've just been on this positive trajectory. So when people are like, oh, it's so amazing what you've done, and all of that, and I'm like, thank you, it is. But at the same time, like, I don't know how I've done it. It just happened.
So did you have another job when you started that, or was that like kind of your full-time thing straight away?
No, literally, I was on benefits.
Okay.
Because literally no one would hire me. Like I was overqualified to work at Tesco's and underexperienced to work in an actual proper people job. And I just like, after a few months, I was like, fuck that, I give up. Like I'm not being told no every single day. Like it's not, rejection's healthy, but like that amount of rejection, like it was just going to bum me out.
Yeah.
So I just fucked that off. Next. Moved on.
Well, that year, especially for, I have a lot of friends who are artists, but that first year after you leave university can be incredibly difficult for like your mental health and maintaining that momentum. I had a few friends that are older than me, and I saw them one by one leave university and then just crumble as a person, and then just about a year later find their feet. And then the same thing happened to me, and I just flopped for a whole year, and then it sort of come back. And I kind of did the same as you, where I was like, the only thing I can do is just the projects I ran. I ran an opera, and I put that on at the end of the year.
What?
Yeah, I wrote an opera, and then I put it on.
You just say this really casually. Like nobody just writes and then produces an opera. Like opera is so up there. It's so like technical and amazing. You're like, oh, I just put on this opera.
Well, I studied composition, so it was like part of my course, but it was kind of a big thing.
Impressive.
But yeah, even in that year I put on an opera, I still kind of viewed myself as being like worthless because I was getting rejected for jobs like trying to organize like the seating plan at a music festival or something like that. And the level of rejection I was getting was just terrible. And then that's what drove me onto like seeking out a better mental attitude when it comes to these things, and seeking out like actual tangible help that can be used to declutter my life and my brain and, rework things that seem depressing into things that actually are quite positive and continue.
I love that.
Attitude. So
yes. I love that so much. I feel like we're on the same wavelength here. It's great.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're working at the Shed.
I own the Shed.
Right. No, you own the Shed.
I am a 28-year-old female person with a vagina who owns a music venue. Shock fucking horror, isn't it? It's just like, you guys haven't asked me this, which I'm ever so grateful for, but so many people all the time are like, oh, so what's it like being a young female in the music industry? And I'm like, does that fucking matter? No.
I don't know what it's like to not be a female in the music industry. You have nothing to compare it to.
How's it being a boy in the music industry? Is it difficult? Is it
It is kind of difficult. I don't know.
I think it's harder to be a man in the industry right now than it is to be a woman, because we're getting all of these like props and opportunities and bonuses. And like, I'm not, like a super feminist. I'm not I don't even know what I am. I'm just, I'm just me. I'm just doing what I want to do. But it's, when I was younger, when I first started like tour managing, I did see like some of that, I don't know, like negative, like womanly bullshit, because one time a security guard thought I was a groupie instead of a tour manager. So I actually did get great satisfaction watching the venue manager then fire him like right in front of me for being sexist. So that was fun. That was being a woman in the music industry. Thoroughly enjoyed that. I was like, oh, you fuck. But yeah, no, that was years and years ago. But I bought the shed. I took over the shed in 2017 because if I didn't do something, or somebody didn't do something, I just happened to be that somebody, then it would have been knocked down and turned into a block of flats. And I went to my first gig there. I met, my first crush there. Like, we used to hang out there in the afternoons. And then when I went away to uni, and then I came back and I decided to join the music industry because I was going to be a wedding planner at one point. Like, it was all got very confusing for me being a teenager. I actually used to do beauty pageants as well. So there you go. Yeah. If you scroll far enough down on my Facebook, you will find these photos. I'm literally like, thank you for being here today. Anyway.
We interviewed Miss Germany World not too long ago.
No way! See, I love pageant girls. Like, I have mad respect for them, but people look at me now and they just think, oh, like, these paths that you've been on are so, like, disconnected from each other. How can one go into the other? But you learn some amazing skills in pageantry, especially, like, how to be nice to people that you don't like. Like, that's a top skill I learned when I was in pageants. But yeah, so I took over the shed 2017. I'm not loaded by any means. I'm not rich. I found an investor, essentially, who bought, he bought the building, the property, and said to me, you have 1 year to prove that this can be a profitable business. If not, I'm going to turn it into a block of flats, because he got the building at like an absolute, like, below market value. And he said, but if if you can, then instead of paying rent, I pay back loan repayments, essentially. So it's the same amount that rent would be, but it's just paying off a very, very large loan that will be there for a very long time. But we did it. So we had 1 year, and literally I worked 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, like, didn't really come up for air, like, was just go all the time. Have an amazing team. Like, the team I have, I honestly think I would have maybe topped myself by now if it wasn't for them, like, gone. And we did it. And on that 1 year anniversary, we actually had Enter Shikari come to the shed, which was like bonkers. Like, all of Enter Shikari, like, they did a Shikari sound system set, and we're a tiny little 200 cap venue. So having Shikari on stage, and I'm standing there, there's actually a picture of me just, like, staring at the stage, like, crying, like, baffled that we've achieved it. But yeah, so that happened. And that's why Dreamy and Keller doesn't really exist anymore, because it all kind of, like, I had a recording studio and rehearsal rooms with DIC, and then I had the shed, and running 2 sites. It was too much. It was too exhausting. So we just kind of, like, merged everything together. And now I don't even really book shows anymore. I have someone who's, like, way more talented, a guy called Tom Carnell. You guys should talk to him too. He's an ace guy, but he's my venue manager now, and he's in like 6 different bands. He's always doing music related things. He's like surviving off Fiverr at the moment, like doing mastering and like voiceovers for other projects. And he's got like a side hustle in band management as well. So I actually just do like the boring business shit now when it comes to the shed, and Tom does all the fun stuff.
Yeah, I talked to because I run a management company called Perspective Music, and I book quite a lot of tours as well. And I've booked some in with Tom, and I've got some bands coming to the shed next.
I love that. See, he's way better than me. He's just got a better ear. Like, I love a bit of smooth jazz now. Like, I'm getting old. I really am. I just can't handle like loud, shouty things unless I'm like that. Like, I appreciate it live, but I'll never be at home and be like, oh, you know what I fancy listening to? Pantera. Like, it's just not.
No, actually, one of my old bands came and played there as well a couple of years ago. But I think we played in like the downstairs, like in that tiny.
Oh yeah, our little punky DIY space. I love it down there.
We played there. I can't even remember what the tour was or when it was, but it was a few years.
Guess they all just blur into one a bit, don't they?
So, what sort of like difficulties did you face when you were trying to get the venue back up and running?
I tell you what, the main thing that we faced as a huge challenge was people's perception of it, so its reputation. So for a very long time, I can say it with love because it was a shithole. It was my shithole, and I loved it as a shithole. I appreciated it as a shithole. But a lot of other people will call it a shithole in a non-endearing way. so when it came to trying to book these bigger bands and speak to these agents, because that was like our main mission, it was like, right, we're going to support the local bands and appreciate them, but they already know that this place is cool as hell now. Like, we have a 15-foot LED screen, like, it's bonkers. It's just like sick as fuck for shows. But the agents who had the big bands didn't realize that we changed. So we reopened April 2017, literally did like 3 months worth of like renovations in like 6 weeks. Like, I learned how to like connect a light together and like rewire things. So Lord knows if the electricity is safe in there or not. I don't know. We were on a budget. Anyway, so I marched myself down, and one of my, I think it was a guy called Dan at the time, to this thing called Venues Day, which the Music Venue Trust puts on. And they have this thing called it's like agent speed dating, essentially. So all the top agents, so from like ITB and like Coda and places like that, they all sit at like bar tables, and then the venues, I think, get between 3 and 5 minutes with each agent to like pitch themselves to these agents. And so nerdy. I took my iPad down, and I'd made a PowerPoint presentation, and everyone else was just handing like bits of paper or business cards. And I sat there, and before they could even say anything, because I was aware I didn't have very much time, I just blasted through this PowerPoint presentation with all these like stats and pictures, and basically trying to get the point across that it's not a shithole anymore. And then from that became friends with a guy called Steve Zapp, who's an award-winning agent from ITB. And now every time we're at industry events, like, you know, we hang out together. I went to the Live UK Music Awards with him. Like, somehow he like blagged me a ticket, which was bonkers. Like, sitting next to like Beyonce's agent. Like, it was just absolutely mental. But I just kind of got up in people's faces about it. And you could probably tell I talk a lot. So I think people just agree with me to shut me up most of the time. And that's how I got over that hurdle.
Nice. That's great. Yeah. I can see how people would be, I can see how you wouldn't be easily forgotten. In a good way.
Thank you. Yeah, the thing is, people either like me and they find me endearing, or they find me so annoying. But either way, I leave a lasting impression. Mm-hmm. So even when I piss people off, I'm like, it's worth it, isn't it?
Yeah, nice. I think that's a good, like, you want to make an impression. And I guess even if you piss people off, as long as you've got the like you said, the stats and the venue to back it up, they're going to remember you, and they're going to be like, right, well, she's a bit annoying, but, you know, we might as well put a gig on in our venue because she's probably going to do the job.
Hammer it home.
Yeah. So you got the venue, you're changing the perception of it, and you kind of won over the big dogs in a way. But tell us more about what you're doing for the local artists, because I think that's always, you know, what people are interested in.
Well, definitely. Well, one of the, sorry, I'm really hot. I'm just going to take off my jumper. Really sorry.
Don't worry, we can edit that out.
Or keep it in.
Always a professional. Anyway, one layer free. I'm cooler now. So one of the things that used to really piss me off to high heavens, with the cool venues or like the academies or the more established spaces, was whenever they would have touring bands, they would only ever have one tour support, and they wouldn't put any effort into their Facebook page. They'd literally just be like, oh, band X plus tour support from band Z, tickets on sale now. And that would be it. That would be the description. And it always fucked me off, because like, even if I love that tour support, like, I don't know what they're called. Like, I can't go and check them out beforehand. Like, people get on these big tours for exposure, because those tour supports were very, like, recently local bands, like, really not playing to very many people. So first thing and I know that kind of spreads out to like the local level, like nationally, but whenever we get acts coming, we bulk out our event pages to, even if it's just like copy and pasting like their bio or a couple of lines, or like, you can check out their music here. And just to really try and get people excited about the show as a whole, instead of just showing up for the headline band. And we don't release set times ever. Like, we'll tell them what time the show starts and finishes, and smart people can kind of work it out in between. But we're never going to be like, oh, the headliner's on at 10, because people are going to rock up at 9:55. And that shit. Every headliner always started out as an opening band at one point as well, which people tend to forget. All the normal folk out there, they just seem to forget that everyone starts from nothing. Anyway, the actual local bands, so the local Leicester bands, we now have a policy that whenever a tour is booked with us, at least one Leicester band has to be accepted on that bill. And we're battling with agents at the moment because a lot of them are trying to seek approval for all the bands. So it's back and forth, back and forth. It's honestly just such a convoluted way of doing things. So we're saying to them now, like, yes, we'll take this show on. Yes, we'll pay that, higher kind of guarantee you're asking for. But also in the same breath, you need to trust us as industry professionals and venue owners and, venue programmers and, all of the million different side hustles we have going on within the music industry, that we know and we understand what bands to book. And I'm not going to put a reggae band on with a, a pissing metal band, am I? Because I'm not an idiot. Like, I'm going to match them up because that doesn't benefit me, doesn't benefit the reggae band, doesn't benefit the metal band. And it's like, do you know what I mean? So that's what we have. We have like a really strict policy with it. And we do put on local only bills. And, maybe like moving forwards once a month, we're going to have like a big local only showcase, like in the main room. But right now, we're trying to build up the locals by getting them on like really sick support. So people who come for one band, we're trying to trick them into falling in love with another band. And that's just, I don't know, that's just my way of like pissing people off who don't do things my way, I guess.
I think as you're thinking about that, then I was thinking about, so my company's pretty small and I don't deal with that many bigger agents, but a lot of the times when I have sort of tried to be in contact with bigger agents, or when I've gotten sort of my bands on local supports with bigger slots, there's been like quite a lot of ego involved when you're talking to these bigger people. Obviously you can't speak for everyone because not everyone's like that, but I feel like as you get higher up in the music industry, there's a hell of a lot of ego flying around.
Yes,
I don't think that helps.
there is.
Yeah, it can be a bit
Bullshit.
of a dick swinging competition sometimes.
Mm.
Oh my God, honestly, it's so unbelievably ridiculous. And I think when we first reopened the shed, and in the years leading up to that, when I was still quite new, quite fresh, quite naive, I didn't want to piss any of the big boys off. I wanted to play by their rules because they didn't know me. I didn't really have anything that they wanted, whereas now I do. I have a really fucking cool venue that they want their bands to play in, and it has a good reputation, and it's run by people that give a shit about the music over the money, which I think is quite rare these days. Because a lot of people, I don't know why people go in the music industry to make money. Like, that's fucking dumb, isn't it? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, yes, it's great, but it's really not something that happens immediately, ever. So, Tom and I are now standing up to these agents. And if you ever speak to Tom, just like get him really wound up about agents and then record that rant, because that will go viral, because he hates agents probably more than anybody else in the world hates agents. But, you're right. It does get into dick swinging contest. And I guess I'm kind of part of that now, because I'm now like, well, you can play by my rules or you're out the door. But I like to think that my rules are from a place of like love and empathy and want for the little people to win instead of the people at the top making all the money. Does that make sense?
But someone's got to care about the little guy for them to become the big guy in any way. Because if they've got...
I was the little guy, like literally like 3 years ago. Who the fuck was I? Why should people pay attention to what I was saying? You know what I mean? But somebody gave me a chance. Somebody gave me a shot. And here I am with you, actually caring. Well, hopefully you're caring about what I have to say. Like, I now have a voice and a platform, and I'll be damned if I don't use it to benefit others now, because it's shitty being at the bottom and being at the starting point and feeling like you're shouting into the void. But eventually, it's like spaghetti. When it's not cooked and you throw it against the wall, it doesn't stick, does it?
No.
Right? But then, have you ever done that? I do this. I love it. I get great joy out of it. And I eat a lot of pasta.
I did it recently and Will hadn't heard of it. I think he was quite surprised, but it's a good method.
Right? And it's also a good metaphor. But, when the spaghetti is done, and me being the spaghetti now, you throw it against the wall and it sticks. You just need someone who knows what they're doing to boil you for long enough. Do you know what I mean?
I guess on that similar note, though, particularly in the music industry, there's often like added pressure to make it like young. Like you're always comparing yourself to like these people who've made it young. And if you're working in any way in like the rock sphere, by the time you've hit like 25, you're old. Do you know what I mean? You're like old news. If there's a chance you might have like an early gray hair, then you're going to be like that weird guy with the gray hair. Well, it seems like, but it just isn't the case. I don't know if you think that that's changing now, or like we still have this weird pressure to be like a child genius, and then we pick out the princes and the Bjorks who are like always famous and hold ourselves up to them, and forget about the people who just kind of are older and no one really gives a shit.
Well, I know what you mean. I really know what you mean. I think for a long time, a lot of us who want to make it in entertainment industries, there is this pressure that if you don't hit it by the time you're 30, you're never going to make it and you need to give up and walk away. And even me at 28, like I'm still so young. I got myself in a right flap earlier this year thinking that, my time was running out. I hadn't done enough. I wasn't going to be relevant anymore. And I was thinking, hold the fuck on. Like, Jesus Christ, like I'm 28. I'm not 128. And also, people who are 128 probably know way more shit than I do at 28. So no, I'm with you. But like, I think that's like a big kind of mass media thing. And I think the trend now, you see it like even outside of the music industry, even in people's like shopping habits, it's going more towards independent things. It's going away from like that mainstream stuff that's filtered down to us from like the big media outlets. And people are, I don't know what it is, maybe they're developing their own brain cells. I could be wrong. Crazier things have happened, but people are now, searching for things that resonate with them instead of what they think they should like and they should enjoy. So I don't think you're ever too old or too young to start again or build an empire. I honestly think that if you need to pivot because you're not on a positive trajectory, then you should pivot and you should do what makes you feel happy and feel that joy. And if you wake up in 10 years' time, you're like, I actually want to go and write some operas again, go and write some fucking operas again. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's hella cool. I've never met anyone who does that. I'm fixated on it. I really am.
Well,
but
I've got another one coming up, apparently. Oh, I was supposed to write I was supposed to write one for this opera festival in London called Tête-à-Tête in September, but I don't think it's going to be happening, which means I'm going to be writing it for next September, which is better because I don't want to write it over summer.
No. And also I feel like operas are quite emotional things, and I think it's quite difficult to get really like darkly emotional, like when the sun is shining. You want to do it when like it's, it's the whole pathetic fallacy thing, isn't it? Like it's much easier to be dark and twisty when it's literally dark and twisty outside.
Well, that's true, yeah, for sure. Well, I've had a bit of thunder recently, so maybe I'll just sit in a flurry one night.
That's the most interesting conversation I've ever had about weather.
Go pretty deep. Is that monitor thing going to have been?
No, it's fine.
Oh, okay. So to cover all the things that you do, there's quite a lot of things that you do. So you went from taking over the shed, and the next thing was your online travel business. Is that right?
Yeah. So I found So I started that last summer because I found myself I've almost been bored, to be honest. I had this amazing team in place at the shed, and at this point, my stress levels were really starting to peak. I'd gotten diagnosed with chronic stress a few months prior to. Should have taken some time off work, didn't. Anyway, so 6 months after being diagnosed with chronic stress, my team kind of sat me down. They were like, look, we can tell you're getting overwhelmed. You're not nice to be around. Delegate some work out to us, because at this point I was still trying to like run the bar, run the socials, do all the bookings. Like I literally had a bar manager and had a venue manager, and I wasn't letting them do anything because I was being such a control freak. I think because I'd put so much pressure on myself that first year, it's very difficult to then kind of get out of that mode when you're so stuck in it. Anyway, they sat me down and they were like, right, let's see how it goes. And you know what? Lo and fucking behold, they did an amazing job. And the bar started running even smoother, and like the show started getting even better because, like Tom Carnell, he is so on the ball with like what's like current and music wise. Like I said, I just like listening to jazz now. I find it very soothing. And I just found myself kind of searching for more. And I was like, right, well, I've like, with entrepreneurs, like we don't really get hobbies, we get side hustles. It's just like something that you are plagued with, I suppose. And I always try and get hobbies and I end up monetizing them because in my mind, that's really fun. Like I get really excited about stuff like that. And I just kind of stumbled across this opportunity and I thought, what else do I enjoy? I like property and I like traveling. And I don't have enough money to get into property because I don't have a spare 100 grand lying around just yet, you know. And the travel business, that costs like under 200 quid to get set up and running. So I was like, that's easier and more affordable and a no-brainer. So I started doing that last summer. And now after a few months, I was like, holy shit, this is like an absolute no-brainer. Like basically commission is built into every single booking that you do. And I now make that commission back on every booking I do for myself, for others. And I also train other people and mentor other people how to do that as well. So a lot of people do it for like a bit of money on the side. Some people have left their jobs now and are full-time independent travel agents, like thanks to me helping them. So it's pretty fulfilling, like bringing the joy to other people. And then that then segued onto my new thing, which I'm working on. And I'm now training to become a certified neuro-linguistic practitioner and launching a business and mindset coaching arm to everything. So I can help people outside of just the music and travel industries, you know, find their positive trajectory, which I'm obsessed with. And I just get a lot of joy out of bringing the joy to other people now. And it sounds cheesy, but I'm okay with that. I like it. I like being happy.
To define just like slightly in more detail what this latest thing is, maybe even what those 3 words mean.
So neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP for short, it's fascinating basically. It's the theory that what goes out your mouth goes into your brain. So it's rewiring how we speak to ourselves and how we speak to others. And then that then changes our overall demeanor and our actions, because basically our thoughts then affect our words, which come out of our mouth, and then affect our behaviors, which then affect our actions. So if we're starting that whole path from a place of negativity with like, I can't, I shan't, I won't, you know, things like that, then a lot of the time it's really not going to work out for you. But if you start it from a place of positivity, things are going to be a lot easier. And it's getting past and smashing limiting beliefs essentially, because when we're kids, and a lot of people already know this, but up until the age of it's around 7 years old, that's when we form a lot of our fundamental belief systems, and they are then in our subconscious mind. And so, for example, a lot of people who are now like grown-ups say things like, I can't dance. Like you take them to a party that I can't dance. And it's like, you can dance, just somebody at some point in your life told you not to dance and made you feel like shit about it. Do you know what I mean? And the same with like singing or being too loud or this, that, and the other. Like you can do these things, just somebody told you not to, which is why you want to, but you feel limited with it. So that's basically a limiting belief. And once I figured that out, I was like, holy shit, I've got the answer to literally everything here. And now I want to help everybody else figure everything else out, because it's not that the things in life that we want don't exist yet, it's that they do exist. We're just not aware that we can really have them. And honestly, that was like an aha moment. After I finished my recent nervous breakdown at the beginning of lockdown, I then realized this. And then I started on this course to actually have a medical certificate so I can give you legitimate advice instead of just rambles.
One of the things that I thought of as you were saying that is recently I've noticed that I keep telling myself out loud that I'm so tired. I'm exhausted. And then like an hour later, I'll just feel way more tired than I was before. And I feel like I'm just telling myself that I'm tired even when I'm not. And maybe that's the thing.
Honestly, like you have just hit the nail on the head. So without going too technical, but with being a little bit technical, we essentially have like a little doorman to our brain. And that is called the reticular activating system, like the RAS. And our minds take in what we hear and what we see around us, and then we then form our model of the world on those, those visual and those audio simulations, and that's how we then feel. So if you're walking around going, I'm so tired, your brain's going to be like, I am tired.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay, it's bedtime. But if you're like, I'm full of energy, even if you're not, you're like, I'm so excited to do this. I am so grateful to start on this really boring project because I know that when I finish it, it's going to be so good. And then I won't have to do this boring thing again. And you trick your brain into getting hyped up over something that is like boring. That's how I do my accounts. That's how I get through my accounting. Like, so boring, but it's got to be done.
I think there's also like a part of it is linked to the fact that people don't often have a very good vocabulary when they describe things. So maybe when you're saying that you're tired, what you actually mean is I'm lethargic. When you say I'm tired, you're like, well, I'm tired, I'm done for the day. If you're lethargic, you're like, well, I'm just feeling lethargic right now, and you're gonna feel better. It's like also changing, like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. It's like, am I anxious? Or am I just apprehensive? It's like apprehensive,
Yes.
fine, but anxious is like something you can't get around. And it, just widening that vocabulary and being able to describe exactly how you feel a lot of the time will help, because it seems that the words that we are drawn towards are always like the most extreme ones. Like, I'm depressed. It's like, maybe not depressed. You're just feeling a bit down right now. And you know that if you're feeling down, you're going to feel up maybe later today. Or like,
Yeah. No, you've hit the nail on the head again. So our brains actually have this thing, we're pre-wired. It's called a negative bias. And that is still like instilled in us through our DNA from way back when, because when we were like cavemen, if we noticed the negative things around us first, we would survive. So if you're walking through all hunky-dory, through the outlands or whatever it was, and then you immediately notice a tiger coming after you, and you run away from the danger, you're going to survive. But that it's not relevant in our minds and our lives anymore, because we now have means and tools in order to overcome problems instead of running away from them. So instead of, the tiger being a problem, seeing that instead of running away from it, which we do tend to do a lot nowadays, we can then address said tiger. We can then overcome said tiger, embrace said tiger, and then move past the tiger instead of just jumping to, the negative conclusion. And it's not our fault. That you shouldn't berate yourself for immediately jumping to the negative things. But honestly, the first thing is like realizing it, catching yourself, like having a word with yourself, and then saying out loud, like, like you just said, like, I am not anxious. I am not, I'm not an anxious person. I'm just feeling very apprehensive about this. Something about this is making me feel uncomfortable. And then exploring that gut reaction feeling to then kind of get to the bottom of it and move past it instead of running every time you see a metaphorical tiger.
This really
cool, isn't it?
It really hits home with me, because I have phases of quite like serious anxiety, like to the point where sometimes I can't even like leave the house. But like it's gotten to the point recently where I've really sort of tried to learn about it, and I have realized that for me the whole thing is just association. So like if one night I get anxious in the evening, the next day I'll be like, right, at 7 o'clock, I'm probably going to get anxious again. And that'll happen every night. And I'll just tell myself that it's going to happen. And it's the same with other situations. Like there was a time where like there's a certain street that I got anxious on. So like the next day I was like, well, I've got to avoid that street. And these are just like constant patterns that I felt like I didn't even have a choice as to whether or not I was going to like indulge in them. I just automatically did. But as soon as I sort of, if I'm able to be aware of it and realize it and just look at it and think, okay, well, this is just like an anxious pattern, and there's no foundation for it and it doesn't serve me. Once I figure that out, it kind of just goes. But I do get quite caught up in those patterns. It's fairly difficult to not get caught up in them.
That's me, honestly. Thank you so much. And thank you for your honesty. I think the first thing with this is turning our vulnerability into courage. A lot of people think that being vulnerable makes you weak, whereas I vehemently disagree with that. I think once you explore that vulnerability you have, it's then hugely courageous, because then you start taking those next steps, and you've exactly, like you've just said it, like you've formed that pattern in your mind. And the reason you feel that you have no control over it is because neural pathways have formed in your brain telling you that that street is dangerous. At this time of the day, you're probably going to feel anxious. So the way to get past that is to literally rewire your brain. And that's what, I'm learning how to do with NLP, to then take, a fear or something that's an anxiety trigger, and then rework it, with you. So you can then, walk down streets, you can get past that time. And like, for me, I quit vaping / smoking this week because I had hypnotherapy. And when I came out the other side, I was like, I literally understand what hypnotherapy is now. It's just hella advanced NLP. This is so cool. And it's been 15 years of having a crutch and a dependency on nicotine. And I don't even think about it. And I'm 3 days in and I'm like, don't even care anymore. It's boggling. It's amazing.
Good for you. I'm glad to hear it.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm excited about the money I'm going to save, mainly. It's going to be great.
And when you were getting into this, are there any sort of books or, guides or people that you suggest people look out for if they're feeling, unmotivated and potentially feeling sort of at self-worth at a low? What would you suggest for them to just sort of indulge in and maybe absorb?
Right, I have one, but if you hate reading, then there's also an audio version of this on Audible, but I think someone's ripped it and also put it on YouTube as well. But there is a woman called Jen Sincero, not so sure how you pronounce it. It's Sincero. And she wrote a book called You Are a Badass. And it was the first self-help book I read, personal development, whatever you want to call it. Somebody recommended it to me and I was at my wit's end and I thought, I've literally got nothing to lose. Fuck it, I'm going to read it. And it changed my life. Honestly, I'm not even being dramatic. And now she's got a whole series of books. So I'm currently reading You Are a Badass at Making Money. So I'm breaking down all of these limiting beliefs I had to do with money and I'm loving it. And honestly, the abundance is strong in my life at the moment, from being a broke ass venue owner to I'm not even worried about checking my bank account at the moment. That's how chill I am in just 6 months. It's amazing. So honestly, go and check her out. She changed my life. A lot of the stuff that comes out of my mouth are things that I've learned from her because it's just so powerful. So if anybody's listening to this and they're feeling like ass and they're like, oh, I can never do that because X, Y, and Z, and you have limiting beliefs you're not even aware of, go and check out Jen Sincero or Chinchero. I don't even know. Jen Sincero, I'm going to go with that. But just the way she just breaks it down, because it's not in any kind of linear format. It's you're reading a story and then you're having these aha moments as you're reading this book at the same time. And she also used to be a drummer in a band and she's just really cool. She's not airy fairy.
Do you think that you got so into all this stuff because you managed to sort of reap the rewards of it? Because I know a lot of, maybe not a lot of people, but I know quite a few people who just tend to sort of ignore the way that they feel, or they sort of pretend that they're satisfied because they can't sort of face what they know they need to do to get to the point where they genuinely want to be. But obviously there are also quite a few people who kind of break through like you have when you actually start to focus on the different areas that you need to work on, and you break it down into this, that and the other, and you actually work on it in a proper way. And then you get to a point where you sort of understand it more, and then you can implement that in the other parts of your life as well.
Blimey, loaded question that one, isn't it? I think I got really into it because I tell you what, when I first started my online travel business and I got involved with all of that, there's an element to it which is network marketing. And now network marketing has got a bit of a bad rep because people think it's all pyramid schemes, and it might have been back in the 80s, but these days it's not. It's really similar to affiliate marketing, but the community within the network marketing space are so heavy on personal development because it's so filled with rejection that they start coming out with all of these different phrases, and you see people's transformation right in front of you. And because I was mentally at my wit's end when I found it, I then thought I've got nothing to lose. And I thought I've got to try something else because whatever I'm doing at the moment, it's not working and I keep hitting a brick wall. And that's when another network marketer told me about You Are a Badass, and I got it And I was like, fuck it, I'll read 10 minutes of it. And 10 minutes in, never looked back. And my life just changed like completely that day. And I think it takes a special combination of circumstances for a person to start looking outwardly to find that internal happiness, because a lot of people, they do bumble through life and they settle and they think everything is fine. But some people don't want to settle for fine because they know that, you know, there's greatness out there and they can have that greatness, and they just need a bit of help finding out how to get it. Like for me, I've never been a settler. Fine is never good enough for me. But for a long time, I had no idea how to get what I knew I deserved. And that's kind of what I want to do with this coaching business, is take people who are like, I know I can do this. That's where I want to be. But how do I get there? Because I'm figuring out like how to get there at the moment. And I'm just like mega excited to take lots of lost souls into driven, happy, annoyingly peppy people like myself.
I was just thinking about one of my friends I went to high school with, and he was always kind of just like very jolly, and he never had many aspirations, or like he didn't really know what he wanted to do with himself. And I spoke to him recently, and he was just sort of like, he was like, oh, I just got this new job in a factory, and we're making like the world's leading fiber optic cables, and it's the best job I've ever had. And he was like so happy and like really like just enjoying himself in like doing something that to me seems atrocious. I couldn't imagine being so satisfied with a job like that. But I guess that just speaks to, you know, everyone's different. Not everyone has the same drivers, and not everyone, you know, wants to be a rock star or wants to be famous or wants to make loads of money. Like he's content with what he has, and I guess that's also probably quite a good trait to have.
Oh, well, God, absolutely. And one of the things that I'm fascinated with learning about at the moment is people's different personalities, because I'm like you, like I used to get very confused with how somebody could think, oh, this is such an amazing job, but I'm part of this bigger picture. But some people are just happy being, you know, an integral part of a bigger thing. They don't need to be the bigger thing. And, you know, even like my husband and I, we have very different personalities. We are literally like the yin and the yang. And I'm a very driven, ambitious person. I'm constantly looking to the next thing and the next thing. And I see the bigger picture constantly. Whereas he sees the detail in things. He thinks things through. He's far more logical. So as a unit, we really work, because otherwise I would be very out of control without him. And at the same time, he said that I've broadened his horizons, and he's done things that he might not necessarily have done because he could have overthought them without me being like, no, fuck it, we're doing it now. It's now or never sort of thing. And, you know, and he's got, you know, he loves his job. Whereas I'm like, why do you want to work for somebody else? I could never work for somebody else. Whereas he looks at me and he's like, I don't know how you can cope with your erratic finances, your erratic scheduling. Like, that would drive me insane. So for me, it's really been eye-opening, learning about other people's models of the world and perceptions, and actually really growing to appreciate things like that. It's fascinating.
I was listening to an interview with a woman who voices Lisa Simpson, and she's she's really interesting. And she's famous for doing Lisa Simpson. She's famous for being an actor on the stage, but she's also suffered with bipolar and you know, all the self-doubt that comes with any artist, really. And she says a saying that stuck with me, which is, you can't fill your cup from the outside. That if as much as outside stuff you try to put into your life to gain fulfillment, it's always going to drain away eventually. But you need to find the fulfillment within yourself. You need to fill that cup from the inside as well. So, you know, you're doing all these great things, but you wouldn't necessarily find lasting enjoyment through them by just collecting a load of accomplishments, which you obviously are doing. But you have to balance that out with this mental attitude and constantly reevaluating and seeing the good things, you know, the great team that you made, and the fact that you can now help other people, and like the fact that you've helped other people with the traveling, but now you're going to help other people, you know, actually improve their lives sincerely.
Yeah. And honestly, you've just like really, really nicely summed it up there. And for me, I now honestly get the joy from bringing the joy to other people. And that's what I feel is my purpose, just as, you know, the person you were talking about, his purpose was being part of, you know, building these fiber optic things. And I think as soon as you find that thing that makes you feel electric and you really know what you're supposed to be doing, no matter what part of the puzzle you fill in for somebody else, that's when you really just start to be happy. I've never experienced this before in my life, and I'm adjusting to it at the moment. Weird, but it's nice.
It's good also that you're going into that line of work as somebody who understands artists, because I went through therapy a couple of years ago, or maybe like a year and a half ago now, and I was lucky that the person who was my sort of life coach had worked with a lot of artists and had dated a lot of artists and gave me such a great amount of actual tangible help for an artist, as opposed as well as help as a person to better understand myself and better understand where this creativity comes from. And I mean, it was expensive, but I recommend everyone who's an artist do some research into this and do some, research into how they can help themselves be happier and be more organized and be less cluttered within their life, because there needs to be more people giving out this advice for artists.
But I think that is such an important thing, because as much as I would have loved to have been a musician, I'm not coordinated enough. So that's why I ended up on the admin side, the management side of things. But I think I went on a mental health first aid training course last year with Help Musicians UK, and it was for a lot of venue owners mainly, and venue managers, to help us not only help our teams within the venue, but help artists that come through it as well. And the woman who was delivering this course to us wasn't from the music industry. And when she was hearing all of our stories, things that we've so heavily normalized now, she was baffled that support hadn't been given to any of us earlier on, and also was amazed and applauded us for still kind of sticking it out on these journeys with these very high highs and these very low lows. And it's not a normal 9-to-5 job. And especially for artists and musicians, that rush of endorphins and adrenaline when you're on stage, and then how it drops out when you come off stage. I mean, people, I think normal, I call them normal people outside of the music industry, look in on, I think, a lot of musicians almost with judgment, and they say, well, it's just part of it. You have choices like, why are you dependent on drugs, alcohol? Why do you smoke so much? And I think until they can understand this drastic high and these low lows, there's no equilibrium there. And you're just completely out of whack and completely out of balance. And the majority of the time, nobody knows they don't know how to handle that. They don't know how to deal with it. So I feel very grateful that I'm now trained in dealing with that. And I then pass that down to, my staff. And my husband he's now training to be a mental health first aider as well, because he's also a musician. But people from the outside world looking in, they really need to understand that when you're a creative person, your brains work differently, and there's not that, like that constant level that most people have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think one of the big problems with the way that people perceive artists is that they see it as being fun, which is fun and enjoyable. But then you get these scenarios where someone's like, oh, I've got like a wall that I need painting. I'll buy all the paints and stuff, and you just come over and like you go crazy. And it's like, okay, they see this idea that like you're sat in your studio and you're just like having a load of fun all day, but it's not work, and it doesn't deserve the same sort of credit that doing work does. And sure, there's a whole load of enjoyment that you get out of doing this stuff, but then to perceive it as this idea that you're just itching for any opportunity to write someone a song, as long as they do all the work, promoting it, or, paint someone's wall as long as they pay for all the paints, is just, it's damaging to the people involved in creating it, really.
I agree so much with you. It is so frustrating. And it's also the perception of, it's not a real job. When are you going to get a real job? I mean, I think I was 5 years into my career in the music industry when my family finally stopped asking me when I was going to get a real job. Because, I was running the shed and they were still asking me when I was going to get a real job. And I was like, I have a tangible asset. How is this not a real job? And I just think they don't get it, because it's not, 9 to 5, structured hours, structured pay. And a lot of people's perception of, career success is stability. But stability means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think so long as you can survive and you can thrive in your happiness and your finances, then who's to say that success is 100K a year? I have enough to live on. I'm not rolling in it, but I'm happy and I'm quite chill with where I am. I have a lovely house. I have a lovely home. I can afford to eat. I don't need to do lavish things. Luckily, I've never been a big handbag girl, so that's fine. And then past that, I don't think anything else is really necessary. I'd rather collect experiences than things,
Right. I'm not going to say which family member it is, but when I used to be, I was in metal band for quite a few years, and we were like, obviously I really enjoyed it, but there's a member of my family who he's always very obsessed with money. He's an accountant. Well, he's going to know who it is now, but he's an accountant and a kind of an entrepreneur as well. But he's just always been completely obsessed with money. And when I was in these metal bands, he would email me and tell me, like, he would send me articles about how this new pop band just got famous and how this other pop rap artist became really rich and did this, that, and the other. And he was just he kind of always tried to enforce that I would never get anywhere by being in a metal band in terms of money. And I had to tell him on a regular basis, I'm literally just doing this because this is what I love. I love touring around the country, playing heavy music, and I'm not doing this for money. And I had to tell him that regularly, and he would still just sort of try and hammer in that, oh, but you need to be making money. You need to quit that band and join a pop artist and get famous and get on the TV. And I was just this is just not what I want to do. I'm just not interested in. I appreciate his his thought, and I appreciate that he was trying to sort of I don't know, he was trying to put his experience there for me, because obviously he thinks that in his perception, he thinks that having money is what you need to do, and that's just been his life, and that's fair enough. There's nothing wrong with that, but I don't think it just wasn't very helpful for me to be constantly told that I'm doing the wrong thing because I'm not going to be making.
No. And you know what? It's not productive either. And what I've actually learned on this discovery journey I'm on is people are often critical of others, consciously or subconsciously, when they're jealous about something, where there's an element of what they're seeing that they don't like. So when somebody annoys you, it's because they're mirroring you in some way, and they're presenting something about yourself that you don't like. And it works the same way when people are critical and judgmental. It's usually because deep down inside, there's a part of you doing something that they want to do, but they're too scared to. So for your family member who loves money, yes, he's probably got a really nice car and a really nice house, but is he happy? Is he following his one true passion? Maybe he actually wanted to be a musician when he was younger, but somebody told him not to.
He was.
Yeah, there you go. Do you know what I mean? So him sending all of these passive-aggressive articles, people, I don't know why they do it, but they tend to put other people down to bring them up. And I'm just so done with that. I do not need that negativity in my life anymore.
I think, that actually changed my life. So this is a kind of similar to what you're studying. That changed my life massively when I realized that as well. I guess I realized that through therapy, that you only ever put people down when you're trying to make yourself feel better, whether you're trying to put someone down within your friend group because that kind of puts your hierarchy up, or like you say, you're trying to put someone down because you're jealous of them, so you want other people to think worse of them so that you don't have to be so jealous of that. And then I just started observing myself doing this in every day, and now I don't hardly ever do it. I hardly ever speak about anybody behind their back objectively like that, and it's just made me so free of so much passive aggressiveness that I had towards my friends. And suddenly I was able to actually delight in their success. So I was able to gain some, enjoyment out of them succeeding, when before it would be screw that. I don't want that.
Yeah, honestly, it's I used to be such a gossiper. I mean, even part of me now like loves a little bit of gossip, but at the same time, I try not to engage in anything that's like overly negative and that's, you know, nasty. Like if someone comes to me with a bit of hot gossip, I'm not going to shut them down because I'm nosy and I'm curious. But if that conversation then leads on to, you know, talking smack about them, that's when I'm then going to try and like exit it swiftly, get the hell out of there, because that also brings your own energy vibrations down, and we're all just particles of energy just bumbling around in the universe. And the successful people, the happy people, are quite happily like buzzing and vibrating away at a higher level, and the miserable people, they're down below, they're the ones who are trying to drag you down to their level. And you don't want to be mushing around in the swamp with them. What do you? Nobody wants to be in a swamp. You'd rather be up there fridgening in the sunshine when things are sparkly and happy and successful, and that's where I am.
That's great. I think I definitely started in that sort of hole as well. Like when I first started my company, I would look at competition and just sort of, if like a competition management company signed this band that I knew was doing well, I'd get like really jealous and angry. And it like, just again,
Me too.
it felt like without choice. It was just like the first instant reaction. But then there's a quote that I kind of keep in my head a lot, and it's that's Joe Rogan of all people, but he said that comparison is the death of joy, and I tend to think about that a lot if I ever sort of get that feeling.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Everybody is on different journeys, and everybody is at a different point in their journey as well. And you'll drive yourself absolutely bonkers if you're constantly comparing yourself to other people, because they are not you. They have not had your life experiences. They are not on your journey. The only person who is, and the only person you can compare yourself to, is yourself. So if you want to get in the comparing game and get comparisonitis, then compare yourself to you yesterday. And think, well, yesterday, did I achieve what I wanted to do? If I didn't, why? What can I do to change that in my life, in my routine? Do I need to drop something that I don't enjoy? Do I need to learn a new skill? Like, only ever compare yourself to yourself. And once you do that, you know, the development will just kind of like really just, you know, you should get momentum. Then all of a sudden you do it without even thinking about it. You just become a better you. And that's when, you know, well, that's when I had my light bulb moment. And I was like, well, I'm just going to chill and do my own thing and think about me and, you know, put myself first. And if other people don't like that, fuck them, because their opinions aren't going to pay my bills, are they?
Yeah. There was a speech by Matthew McConaughey. I think it was at like an awards ceremony or something. And he said he got asked when he was younger who his hero was. And he said he got told to always say that his hero was him in 5 years' time. He said that
Love that.
He just keeps telling himself that he's going to be his own hero in 5 years. So I guess that's a similar concept in that you're always just following like yourself rather than others. I guess it's good to have inspiration from others where needed, but only to a certain level.
Yeah, never compare yourself to them. I mean, I look to people like Jen Sincero, Noah Hibbert. Like, I have some really powerful people that I look to in my life for, you know, guidance and mentorship. But at no point do I think, well, they're, you know, making 10 grand a month. Why am I not making 10 grand a month? You know, why I'm not making 10 grand a month? Because I'm at the beginning of my journey, and they're, you know, 5-10 years into it. I'm just, you know, the tip of the iceberg here. And how, you know, people, I think, put too much pressure on themselves to achieve things and know everything straight away. But so long as, you know, you're showing up and you're trying, you know, that's all that really matters. And I think the fear of failure gets in the way of a lot of people trying to give it a good go as well and going for what they want. But one of my favorite phrases at the moment is that the only failure is quitting and everything else is just gathering information. And now I have that ingrained in my brain. The fear of failure is just kind of gone completely.
Yeah, there really is a fear of failure, especially in the arts, because the arts are imperative and the arts are competitive. It's the arts that they're competitive. Like, if you get an opportunity, it's usually at the expense of someone else not getting that opportunity. And to not get that opportunity can feel like you've lost to someone else. And then you can feel quite damaging, when rather you just have to accept that, you know, you get some, you don't get some. And that's just the way the world works. And you just got to dust yourself off and keep going.
Exactly.
And you gain experience. You gain something from everything you do. So true.
Mm-hmm. It really, really is. And I think, honestly, you've just just nicely kind of encompass kind of everything there, which I love. And it's so nice talking to people who have been through, like, it sounds like you've been through similar experiences to me. You've been through the rigmarole of like therapy and like hitting the bottom and then having to, seek outward help to fix whatever's going on inside of you. And it's so incredibly powerful once you do realize that, because when I first like had therapy a few years ago, it took me 3 months to tell anybody out loud because I was so embarrassed about it. And honestly, I look back at that and I'm like, why was I so ashamed of having shitty mental health? And then my whole bloody team then started going to the same therapy center. Like, I'm such an advocate for it now. Like, I scream it from the rooftops because everybody needs help. No matter where you are or who you are, everybody will always need a little hand here and there. And I don't think that's ever a bad thing. And I think it is actually really courageous to know when to ask for help and when to actually get help instead of trying to do it alone. That's dumb.
Well, yeah. The lowest point I got when I didn't decide to go to therapy. My girlfriend and my girlfriend's mum at the time insisted that I go to therapy, and then this was this is the lowest point in my life emotionally, but it was probably the most success that I was actually experiencing as a musician. I had the opera that was happening later that year in like 6 months, was being performed at an opera festival in London and in Manchester. I had an album that I was releasing with my band. And then I just just before I got really depressed, I just like power written this album for myself that was like the best thing I'd written. And I was super proud of it. And all of these things were happening at the same time that were great. And that I could be like, these are tangibly great and measurably great. But yet I felt at my lowest. And it was because I was putting all this pressure on myself to, I don't even know what. I can't even explain it now, what I really wanted out of life. I wasn't allowing myself to be happy and to enjoy it. This was coming out in things like I would always cycle to the shop because that way I would get there quicker and I'd get back quicker and I'd get my computer and I had more time to work. I wouldn't get more work done. I just wouldn't let myself walk through the park, which took 10 minutes. And enjoy that and, relax. I was just like, work up until late at night, get up, try again. And I was just like, frequently just in floods of tears for no reason. I kicked the corner of the bed to high heaven and I wasn't getting anything useful done. It would have been better if I'd gone to the park and drunk beers all day. As long as I'd just done 1 hour of work that morning, I probably would have got more stuff done. And I would have enjoyed my life so much more. Yeah,
honestly, I am so with you. That been there, done that, bought the t-shirt factory, sold it on, Honestly, and like I have like a really good routine that I stick to most days, and I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I smash out a power. I know. I started doing it in January. I dared myself. I couldn't. So then I did it. Like I do that to I don't know. I think I'm sadistic. I do that to myself sometimes. And then I work. I have a power hour between 6 and 7, but I have like half an hour of mindfulness before I start working. So I just sit and I have a coffee. And the reason I get up early is it's before the world really starts whirring around me. So I have that time to myself to kind of come to my senses, smash out a few essential things that I know I need to do. But then by 2 p.m., I don't work after 2 p.m. anymore, like ever, unless there's something burning that's super urgent or something that I'm excited about that I really want to do, or I get inspired to do something. I don't, because I now go out for like really long walks with my husband, or, I indulge in like afternoon like bubble baths sometimes, which is like there's something I never would have done before because I thought if I wasn't busy, then I was wasting my time. And I look back and I'm like, well, what the fuck was I actually busy doing? Like, honestly, exactly the same as you. Better to just like smash out an hour of something good than sit there for 8 hours just like staring like a zombie. It just doesn't make any sense. It's no good for you.
This is I've actually just a day ago realised that that is exactly what I've been doing for the last 6 months, and I haven't had any time off since Christmas. Obviously, being I work from home, so what I've realised that I do is I set a routine, and I get up, I do whatever, and I'll sit there from my laptop, has to be from 9 o'clock, and I have to sit there until 4 or 5 o'clock. And what I've noticed myself doing is that even if there's nothing to do, I'll sit there and I'll force myself to try to find things to do, because if I don't, I feel like I'm not being productive, and I feel like I'm not going to be satisfied with my day.
And on the flip side, we live in the same house, and I'm making music a lot of the time. I feel the pressure to be doing something at 9 o'clock, which I don't normally do, but I'll often work in here. I'll maybe start at 11 quite often. But I'll often work in here 2 hours after 4 o'clock, till 6 easily. So like, there is definitely a weird pressure to fit like in the standard 9 to 5 day that Dolly Parton invented.
Damn you, Dolly!
and that can also give people pressure, and like you have to relax on the weekend, and you have to work Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and sit there and do the work even when there isn't work to be done.
This is my whole predicament right now, and I've decided on advice that I'm going to take this whole next week off work, and I'm just going to recalibrate and find my zen again, and maybe just try and I struggle with how to figure out a routine that works, because if I sit there and try to think about a routine, I feel like I'm still putting too much pressure on, if that makes sense, rather than just going with the flow and doing it. But then because I'm quite an anxious person sometimes, if I don't have a structure that I feel satisfied with, my anxiety will flare up.
No, I'm the same. If I knock my routine off, I'm a bit of a mess. Like, considering like how much I'm into like zenning and going with the flowing and whatnot. If I don't do my DMO, so that's my daily method of operation, so that's my like hour, 2 hours a day of my non-negotiables, I jig myself, like I get on my own nerves and I piss myself off because I know that I could have done it, but I didn't, and I'm doing something else. And then like I get passive aggressive to other people that I'm spending time with, which is normally my husband, the poor thing. And he's like, why are you so angry with me? And it's like, because I've not achieved what I wanted to do today. And he's like, that's not my fault. And I'm like, well, I'm spending time with you, aren't I? So by proxy, anyway, do you know what? It's insanity. And this is why I get up a bit earlier, and I've worked out what my non-negotiables are. And like, for me, it's like, I break it down into like 1 hour. So I know even if I've only been able to do that 1 hour a day, I've still been productive, and I've still made small incremental changes to get to my bigger goal. And that's the whole compound effect. So if anyone's not read that, read the compound effect. Like, honestly, I'm halfway through it and I absolutely love it. But with that, I do like 20 minutes of one thing, 10 minutes of another thing, 20 minutes, and I break it down. And if I've got more time, then I'll go and do another power hour like later in the day. Or if I know I've got 4 hours of interrupted, instead of doing 20 minutes on one thing, I'll do like 40 minutes on one thing. Do you know what I mean? So like, I look at my days each day, and instead of thinking I have to work 9 to 5, because I think that's bollocks, I don't think that works for anybody ever, I tend to just think like, right, in the mornings, before Toby wakes up, I know I'm going to have this hour or two, and I'm going to smash it out before the rest of the world wakes up. Or I put my phone on like airplane mode and I get it done. And then the rest of the day, if I feel inspired, I'll carry on working. But if I'm having a low energy day, or like, honestly, like when it rains or when it's grey, it plays havoc with my mental health. Like, I just can't, I'm just so fuzzy. I can't concentrate. So when I'm having a fuzzy day, I'll go and do something else. I'll have an afternoon bubble bath. I'll binge watch Netflix. I'll nap for the whole day if I want to, so long as I've done that 1 hour of non-negotiables. And that's my advice to anybody that struggles with trying to get shit done, is just be disciplined for an hour, and then the rest of your day, do whatever feels right in that moment, and just take the pressure off. Because the second I started taking the pressure off, everything started flowing. I swear to God.
I mean, another point this sort of adds on to that as well is noticing the things you do that aren't considered work but are considered successful. So today we sat down for an hour before this, and we went over what we wanted to achieve in this podcast. And then we're going to do the podcast, which is going to last like, maybe 2 hours in total. That's 3 hours of our Saturday that's spent productively, like, benefiting ourselves in some way. Mm-hmm. But I bet neither of us are going to consider this a work day, a 3 hours of work.
Because it's not what we've been taught that work is. I feel like our parents, the school, society, like whatever whatever you want to call it, has taught us that work is sitting somewhere almost uncomfortable for a structured amount of time, doing something that we don't necessarily enjoy in order to get some kind of financial reward, and that's work. And it's fuck that off, honestly. Like, to me, like, this still counts under my work umbrella because it's productive. Like, we're connecting as people. Like, I'm learning your story, you're learning mine. I'm going to share your stuff on my side. You're going to share my stuff on your side. And that benefits us in order to then, somewhere down the line, go to a financial reward. So in a really roundabout way, we are at work right now. We're just, smart enough not to be bored doing it. Yay us. We figured it out.
Yeah. It's, as for talking about this, I'm connecting the dots in my head between how I am and these things that we're talking about. It's quite interesting. It's a good thing because this whole week, I'm spending this week figuring myself out and getting back on track.
If you need any help, honestly, just drop me a message because I'm in the business of joy bringing now. And if I can just help one person and that's you from this, then, that's made my day worthwhile. Because as soon as somebody sat me down, they were like, because I'd heard that phrase, working smart, not working hard, so many times. And it really used to get on my nerves because I was like, what do you mean? What does this mean? Like, I'm working as hard as I can right now. What does working smart mean, you insane person? And then when somebody broke it down for me and showed me what a DMO was, a daily method of operation, and they told me that you don't have to work all these hours so long as you're just doing the things that you need to do. Because I think a lot of people look at their day and they're really busy, but then when they start to chunk it down and you break it down into sections and you look at it and you're like, what is essential to what I need to do? What are the things that I have to do? What are the things that I want to do? What are the things that I need to do? And then I think once you start to categorize it, a lot of the fluff in between just kind of fades away a bit. And then when you chunk it down into power hours, you stop going on YouTube and looking at cats for hours on end.
I found that the deeper I go into this hole where I take everything so seriously and I look at, I have to work 9 to 5 and I have to get this done. I stop enjoying other things more too because I start treating them like their chores. Like, there are like books that I want to read and I'd be like, right, I have to sit down at 6:30 and read this book because that's like part of this structure for today. But then I'll do it.
I do that. I used to do that. I'm trying to stop doing that.
And it kind of just takes the fun out of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's quite a difficult habit to stop, especially when you get so caught up in it and you're doing it for such a long time.
Oh, no, obviously, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, you've literally created neural pathways in your brain. Like, things like this are very difficult to break. And it's not like you can just change one thought and change your whole mind. Like, you have to put the work in. But I think it's amazing that you've already recognized several different things, even in just chatting for an hour and a half, you've already pinpointed so many things in your life that you're like, okay, well, I'm aware that I'm doing this. So now I'm going to try and alter it. I'm going to catch myself out. And every time I do catch myself red-handed, I'm going to pivot. And that's part of it because you're not bumbling through life wondering why you're miserable, wondering why you're overworked and overstretched, but never really achieving anything. You've figured out, what your main stresses are. So now the next point has to be getting uncomfortable. And that is my whole thing at the moment, because the second you feel uncomfortable, you're headed in the right direction. If something's like, oh, I don't like this, do it. Do it and do it with purpose, because I've started doing that. And honestly, I used to run a mile because I used to think if it makes me feel uncomfortable, it must be wrong. No. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, go and do it, because it means that you're developing and you're growing as a person.
For sure. There's a lot of sayings, a lot of quotes today, but there's a David Goggins quote. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's like an ultra athlete, but he always says, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, get uncomfortable, get successful. That is literally why I named my podcast that, because it's just the truest truth that I've ever had. And the second that I started deliberately daring myself to do things like getting up at 5:30 in the morning, I used to go to bed at 5:30 in the morning. I'm in the music industry, that's normal bedtime for us. I just kind of flipped my whole day on its head. because I was like, well, if it makes me feel uncomfortable and I bet you I can't do it, I was like, well, actually, I bet you I can do it. And this whole internal monologue, I get a bit weird with it sometimes. Point is, I did it. And now I have 3 businesses 6 months later. Instead of 1 that wasn't really working, I have 3 that are blossoming.
Yeah, well, there's the proof in the pudding.
Tell us a little bit more about the podcast then.
So I actually launched that this week. It's something I've wanted to do for a while. But my own fear was standing in my way. Again, I was being a hypocrite. It was making me feel uncomfortable. So I was spouting all of this advice, but I wasn't doing it myself because I was worried about, releasing my inner workings to people and being judged and people being critical of me. And then once I realized that, I was like, well, I have to do it now, don't I? I'm going to have to go through with this. Like, fuck's sake, I jigged myself essentially. So I wanted to have it as a mix of powerful affirmations as well as helpful, like tips and tricks I've learned along the way. Instead of just rattling off some kind of listicle, I want to go through my own life experiences and then what I learned through them, and then be able to spin that and help other people along the way. So there's 3 episodes out at the moment. One is just a 7-minute affirmations for confidence, because honestly, my advice to you would be like, start your affirmations, because if you're feeling anxious and you're feeling unsettled, as soon as you start saying things out loud like, I am confident, I am successful, I give myself permission to be successful, then your brain starts thinking it. So once a week, there's going to be an affirmation recording coming out with like different themes and topics. There's a little introduction on there for people who aren't like really in my world at the moment. And then today I released one about how I broke up with my bad habit through hypnotherapy and rewiring my brain. And I have no idea what next week's is going to be. It just depends what happens in the next 2 days in the land of Liz, I guess.
Nice. I like that attitude, just doing it on the fly, and just, you seem to be, like you say, on such a positive roll that I'm sure so much discovery is going on in your life, so much personal.
Oh my God, loads.
Right now.
But the thing is that I wanted to record this podcast yesterday, and I even put on my social media, like, I'm going to record this podcast, it's going to come out, but then I didn't feel right. I hadn't processed this whole quitting vaping thing properly in my head yet, and I was still really fucking cranky and a little bit murdery because my brain still wanted nicotine. So even though I didn't want to reach for a cigarette on my vape, my brain was still like, I want to kill people. So, instead of forcing myself to stick to my allotted time and sit down and do a podcast yesterday, as I told myself I was going to do every Monday and every Friday, and I just kind of went with it. And then I woke up this morning at 6, and then I felt inspired. And then I just rambled on for 42 minutes, and I listened back to it, and I was like, that's fucking gold. I can't believe that came out my mouth. So I'm glad I didn't do it yesterday. So again, it just circles back to what we've been talking about. Like, the more you force things, the worse it's going to be. The more you kind of go with the flow and just get the basics done, the easier everything kind of gets.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I've learned a lot today, which is good.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of going over everything, and I'm just like, I've got so many things that I need to implement in my life now, which I will enjoy doing this week.
You know what? Keep me updated. I actually want to hear. I dare you to get uncomfortable and try and not be anxious around 7 p.m. and go and walk down that dodgy street in daylight and let somebody know you're doing it as well. Because if you're scared of the street, there's probably a reason. But my point is address those tigers in your life, and then, I'll be listening to whatever comes after this and seeing if you've made any changes.
I'll try my best to keep you up to date.
Right. Well, that's been a fantastic conversation. Thanks. I think this is a good place to wrap it up. I don't know.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Is any lasting message you want to leave the listeners?
Oh my God.
We've left.
I think we've covered so much ground today, and I love conversations like this that start off as one thing and then they develop and they turn out to be this, this beautiful kind of clusterfuck of revelations. They're my favorite kind of conversations. But I think if anyone is listening right now and they're having any of these like aha moments, but you don't know how to aha your ahas, then what I say to everyone who listens to my podcast, who listens to my lives on Facebook, just drop me a message, because I'm never going to turn around and shun somebody who needs help. And I just I'm not in the business of charging people for like advice or expertise yet, because I don't feel quite ready yet. Like the universe hasn't given me a sign yet. So anybody who's struggling out there, who just wants to pick me up, like honestly, drop me a message and let's talk. We can be on a phone call, or it can just be text. I do not tweet though. I don't understand Twitter.
Great. Well, where can people find you then? That's probably a good time to say that.
So if you Google me, if you Google Elisabeth, spelled with an S, not a Z, Elisabeth Carley-Leonard, I am the only me that exists in the world. I know this because I have Googled myself before. I get great joy out of being so uniquely unique that, having a difficult name has to have its perks, doesn't it? So you can find me on social media, so Facebook or Instagram, obviously not Twitter. Just type in my name and I'll come up. I'm actually in the process of building a website at the moment. If you want to find my podcast, then that's on Spotify, and it's every day it's being uploaded to more streaming services, so like Apple Music and like Google Music and all the other whatever musics there are. And that my podcast is called Get Uncomfortable and Get Successful. So Google my name or just like search that and let's connect. And I'm excited to meet any of you out there who are listening.